Chapter 41. Bye. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, what if I become mad about money, buying things every single day? Buy whatever you like. What if I am not filial to your parents or am disobedient toward them? If you have the guts to do so. What about gambling? You can gamble however you like. There were many casinos under his name. What if I? Mu Huan's words were swallowed by a steaming hot kiss as Bao Junyan no longer wanted to answer any more of her boring questions. MMPH. Why was he suddenly acting like this? They were clearly in the middle of a very serious problem. Following that, Mu Huan didn't have the time to think about anything else. They didn't even know how they found their way back to the bedroom. The next day, as she didn't manage to find out what trump card matriarch Mu held, Mu Huan decided to temporarily give her promise to her. The elder Mrs. Mu made her wait for the notice and the plan. Mu Huan and Li Meng received another call. A wealthy woman had been financially providing for a young man at the Prince Clubhouse. On the spur of the moment, when she was drunk, she had given the man a villa and a bank savings card that contained over 5 million yuan. When she sobered up, the wealthy lady became afraid that she would be found out by her husband for giving away so much money. Therefore, she wanted the money back, but the man can no longer be contacted. The rich lady requested for them to at least retrieve the ownership of the villa. As for the money in her card, she could tell her husband that she had lost them all at a casino. In comparison, the villa would tip off her husband too easily. The wealthy lady was generous with her remuneration, which gave Mu Huan and Li Meng a huge motivation. The moment they received the assignment, they instantly disguised themselves as clients and began to investigate the Prince Clubhouse. Wow! It was no wonder that she was so happy to give so much away. He is so handsome. Li Meng said, complimenting the man as she looked at his picture. Yes, he is. But he pales in comparison to this guy, Mu Huan said as she pointed at the lead host in the clubhouse. Li Meng looked over. What the F***ck? He is drop-dead gorgeous. I can't believe such a handsome man is doing such a job. He can totally debut as a celebrity. That was what Mu Huan thought too. While they were still flabbergasted by the lead host, the clubhouse manager brought out a group of handsome men for them to pick from. The lead host was also in the mix. Normally, pictures of these men would have been enhanced, especially the pictures in such a business. There would be some differences between the real person and their photos. However, this was absolutely not the case for the lead host. In fact, he was even more dashing than his photo. Especially those eyes of his. They could make any woman swoon. He had a great image as well. No one would be able to tell that he worked at such a place. As Mu Huan looked at him, there was a sudden glint in her eyes. Seeing her dazzling eyes, Li Meng couldn't help but bump her a little as she whispered, "Please don't tell me you have your eyes on him. That's not right. You are thinking too much. He will be useful." Mu Huan said as she pointed at the lead host, "Him. We want only him." Seeing that they finally had two young and pretty ladies in the clubhouse yet they had chosen the lead host instead of them, the rest of the handsome men glared at him with jealousy and envy in their eyes before leaving unwillingly. "Little guy, come. Have a seat here." Mu Huan patted the seat beside her as she invited the host over. Li Meng. Did she really have use for him other than the fact that she was interested in him? The lead host looked at her indifferently as he said, "I'm very expensive. I have the money, don't worry." Mu Huan curled her finger toward him, indicating for him to come over. The lead host remained silent. This was the first time he had met a lady who was in such a hurry. Even though Mu Huan and Li Meng had put on make-up to make themselves look more mature, as a lead host who had read countless women, he could see their real ages at a glance. When Li Meng realized that she could interact with the handsome man up close, she decided to ignore Mu Huan's abnormal behavior. Excitedly, she yelled, "Little guy, come on. Don't worry, we won't eat you up." Chapter 42. Degenerating Public Morals. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. The lead host had never been scared of even the most ruthless women. But for some reason, he was strangely afraid of the two ladies in front of him. As expected, however, after sitting down, the two women didn't have the courage despite the lustful intentions they had. Even though they seemed excited and wanted to get close to him, they still subtly maintained a slight distance from him. However, although the lead host had a way with people, Li Meng and Mu Huan still managed to come together and tactfully get a few answers out of him. But as Mu Huan kept on asking the lead host more about himself than the other host in question, the man was not suspicious of them. He thought that they were just a pair of bored wealthy young ladies who wanted to increase their knowledge of what was happening outside. That's why they seemed so curious about anything and everything. The lead host's time was indeed very expensive. When they were settling the bill, Mu Huan and Li Meng could feel the pain when they saw the fees. Now I'm tempted to dress up as a guy and be a lead host here," Mu Huan commented, envious of how much the man could earn. "You can't. You will look too girly. Did you see how stylish he was? Wow, he's absolutely amazing." When Li Meng thought about the lead host's looks once again, her head felt giddy. "Tsk. That's because I don't feel like being aggressive. If I tried, even you might fall for me." Mu Huan huffed. "I think you are the one falling for the lead host instead. If not, why would you ask more questions about him than the host our client was providing for? I told you, you can't do this. Do you take me as a fool? Me? Infatuated with him? Yes, he is handsome, but next to Bao Junyan, his looks are incomparable. After seeing exceptional looks like Bao Junyan's, I think everyone else is just rubbish, all right." "I agree." Li Meng nodded her head. "Right." Mu Huan grabbed Li Meng's arm as they headed out. At this moment, in a black car waiting at a red light. Now their public morals are seriously degenerating. Gong Zai shook his head. Bao Junyan was buried amongst his files and didn't respond to him. 18 to 19. Year. Old girls coming to such a place to find some fun. This is really. When Bao Junyan heard what he said, and perhaps because he had married a little wife who was around the same age as well, he looked up out of habit. Just as he looked over, Mu Huan and Li Meng had already turned around and were walking in the opposite direction. Therefore, he only managed to see their backs. "How did you know their ages?" Gong Zai was instantly energetic, as it was rare for Bao Junyan to take an interest in what he said. "Of course, it was based on my experience of reading many girls. No matter how well women try to preserve themselves, the 40-somethings will look different from the 30-somethings, and the 30-somethings will definitely look very different from the 20-somethings. The difference between 18 to 19-year-olds and the 20-somethings is only a little, but the feeling they give off is very different. Among the women Gong Zai had dated, there were some that were as old as 30+ and as young as 18 to 19. Those two can't be more than 20. Gong Zai pointed at Mu Huan and Li Meng's backs as he said that. Bao Junyan furrowed his eyebrows because one of the two figures was very similar to his wife. When Mu Huan and Bao Junyan had just married, Bao Junyan rarely came home and didn't really care much for Mu Huan. Mu Huan also put on heavy make-up, and Bao Junyan did not bother with girls whom he thought were delinquents. Therefore, he didn't recognize that it was her. But he had interacted a lot more with Mu Huan recently, and since he was looking so closely, he could tell the similarities between his wife and that woman. Right at this moment, the traffic light turned green. The driver stepped on the gas pedal and they drove ahead. Bao Junyan's eyebrows furrowed deeper when he was unable to look at their backs any longer. Chapter 43. I'll pick you up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios. Even though he believed that his little wife would never appear in such a place at night, he found that figure to be really familiar. If Bao Junyan had to say what he was most familiar with about Mu Huan, it would be her body, since most of the time they had spent together occurred at night. Brother Yen, what's wrong? Gong Zai asked him with furrowed eyebrows. I have something that I need to settle. Just alight somewhere ahead and take a cab back. After saying that, Bao Junyan asked the driver to stop ahead and had Gong Zai get down. Gong Zai. After Gong Zai had left, Bao Junyan called Mu Huan. Mu Huan, who was currently talking to Li Meng happily and was about to start her motorcycle with her key, heard the ring of her phone. When she saw that it was Bao Junyan calling, she hurriedly asked Li Meng to keep quiet. She picked up the call and said with a soft voice, "Hubby. Are you home?" Mu Huan was stunned for a moment. "No, hubby, are you home?" Was he calling because he was home and didn't see her? Why did he return home so early today? Where are you? Mu Huan's heart skipped a beat. What's wrong, hubby? I am heading home, so I'll pick you up. Bao Junyan wasn't suspecting Mu Huan of anything. Even though he didn't know his little wife that well, he was very sure that she wasn't the kind of person who would go to such a place to look for fun. It was just that he was feeling a little unhappy after seeing someone with a similar back view as his wife appearing in such a place. Therefore, he wanted to see his little wife. You don't have to pick me up, I'll take a cab back by myself. Mu Huan wouldn't dare to let Bao Junyan see her like this. Where? Bao Junyan asked with a tone of command, not allowing for any opposition. Mu Huan knew that he would definitely come over. Her head began to throb as she swept her gaze around her surroundings and said, I'm at a bookstore. Give me the address of the bookstore. I'll pick you up. Hubby, where are you right now? It's rather late and the bookstore is most likely closing soon. I'll see roughly when you can arrive. If you can't arrive in time, I can wait somewhere else. She needed to know how much time she had. Bao Junyan looked out of the car window and answered, I'm near Zhongxian building. When Mu Huan thought about how the Zhongxian building was near them, she was even more shocked. She began to stutter unconsciously, I'm not very sure about the rough location I'm in. I'll ask the store clerk and send the address to you. Alright. Mu Huan hung up the call and hurriedly took out her bag from the motorcycle compartment. Pulling on Li Meng's hand, they dashed to the bookstore on the opposite end. What is it? Bao Junyan wants to come over and pick me up. Take my phone and go to the bookshop. After about 3 minutes, send Bao Junyan a text about the bookstore's location, then pick out some books related to pharmacy. I'll head to the washroom to change. Mu Huan explained as she ran. Okay. Li Meng had been partners with her for so long, thus, they had good chemistry with one another. The other woman didn't need to say much for her to know what she needed to do. Mu Huan had been to this bookstore before and knew where the washroom was. After entering the shop, she dashed directly toward the washroom at the second level, so fast that the store clerks did not even see her. Li Meng followed after as the pharmacy books were also coincidentally on the second level. After removing her makeup, Mu Huan lowered her head into the basin and washed her hair as her hairstyle today was permanent. Fortunately, it was summertime and the water wasn't so cool. Her hair was also short and was therefore fast to wash. She also wore only a dress, taking her only a few minutes to change and settle everything. Li Meng had already picked out a few books for her. It was just that Mu Huan's hair was obviously still wet. What should we do? Your hair is still extremely wet. Li Meng saw the droplets in her hair. The moment Mu Huan noticed the air conditioner, she stood on a stool and used it to blow her hair. Even though it was cool wind, it was still wind, and that could make her hair dry faster. Thankfully, it was at night and the second level was an area for specialized books. No one would think that she was being weird. You'll get a cold if you do that. Li Meng tried to pull at her. It's too late, Mu Huan said as she pulled at her hair to quicken the drying process. Even if her hair couldn't be completely dried, at least it wouldn't be so wet. She could say that it was sweat since it was summertime. But if she was drenched, there wouldn't be any form of explanation for it. Right at this time, Bao Junyan gave her a call. What do we do? What do we do? Li Meng began to panic. Mu Huan's hair was still very wet. Chapter 44. She is completely different. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Mu Huan asked her to pick up the call first. When the call was connected, Li Meng didn't even dare to breathe. Hubby, are you here? Mu Huan asked. Yeah, I'm downstairs. I'm going to the toilet and then I'll be down. Wait for me, okay? When the call ended, Mu Huan hastened her pace. As she combed through her hair, she asked Li Meng to spread out the books she had picked for her so she could try to remember what these books were. As her hair was short, it didn't take too long for it to be almost dry. Mu Huan felt once again that choosing to maintain a short hair length to save time was the wisest choice she had made. Xiao Meng, help me pack these up. You can leave after we have been gone for a while. Bao Junyan had seen Li Meng before, and Li Meng was still dressed in the same clothes from earlier. To be safe, Mu Huan asked her to head down later. Alright, got it. Be careful. At that moment, it began to rain all of a sudden. When Bao Junyan thought of the possibility that Mu Huan may not have brought an umbrella, he took an umbrella and alighted from the car. When he had entered the bookstore, Mu Huan had just headed downstairs with books in her hands. With her short hair, pink babydoll collar dress, and that bare, fair, and delicate face, she looked tender, clean, and adorable. When he saw her, the unhappiness in Bao Junyan's heart instantly dissipated. His wife was so adorable, studious, and obedient. She was completely different from those ladies who were empty, bored, and only looking for fun everywhere. When Mu Huan saw the initial tenseness in Bao Junyan, she unconsciously lowered her head and walked over. She tried her best to mentally prepare herself. Don't be nervous, don't be nervous. Stay calm, stay calm. Amid her mental mantra, she did not notice that Bao Junyan was walking toward her. She ended up walking straight into his strong embrace. She raised her head frantically like a frightened little elf. She was so adorable to the point that it made others want to caress her hair and appease her. Bao Junyan did just that. He caressed her head and said, "You should try to change your bad habit of always looking down." She always had her head lowered when she saw him. Okay. Mu Huan wanted to lower her head once again but was stopped by his huge hand. From now on, you have to raise your head when you talk to me. For some reason, Bao Junyan recalled how she was when she was drunk. He felt that how she was back then was way better than when she always had her head lowered. Mu Huan raised her head and smiled a little awkwardly. Seeing how she was behaving right now, Bao Junyan didn't say anything else about her. His line of sight fell on the books she was carrying. You like pharmaceutical studies. My course in university is pharmacy. With the subject changed, Mu Huan was no longer as nervous. As she spoke, her heart rate went back to normal. Oh. Bao Junyan suddenly realized that he knew too little about his wife. He only knew that she was currently in the first year of university, but he didn't know what her course of study was. I used to minor in pharmaceutical studies, so feel free to ask me anything that you are unclear about in the future. After saying that, Bao Junyan suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart, thinking about how his university days were so far in the past while his wife had just entered university. Okay, she said, nodding in acquiescence. Give them to me, Bao Junyan said, wanting to help her with her books. Mu Huan wanted to say that it was okay. But seeing how he was already extending his hands, she knew he wouldn't accept any rejection. She obediently handed the books over to him. Bao Junyan took the books to pay for them, with Mu Huan hurriedly catching up to him. The cashier looked at them and was stunned as she had never seen a couple with such good looks. The man was tall and cool, with a desirable face like Adonis. He could drive every girl crazy. The girl was petite and pretty, her fair and delicate face seemed like it could be broken easily just by blowing on it. Chapter 45. You are my very, very best hubby. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. The most touching aspect of this scene was the look of unimaginable loving indulgence that this aloof man had when he cast his eyes on the girl. This scene was so enchantingly beautiful that it sent the salesgirl's heart aflutter. Even the difference in the couple's height was a perfect distance. None of the Korean romantic dramas that the cashier had watched so far could match the romance quotient soaring in the atmosphere right now. The couple's mere presence at the cashiering counter was enough to move her. "Hi, Missy, we are ready to settle the payment," Mu Huan said to alert the distracted cashier. Realizing that she must have been holding a forlorn expression before them, the sales staff quickly recomposed herself with a sheepish smile and collected the payment from them. As the protagonist looked at the man who was taking out his card to pay for her books, an indescribable feeling arose within her all of a sudden. This was a man who helped to carry and pay for her books when he saw her holding them. And this extremely good-looking man was her husband. It was really challenging for her to describe the way she felt at this moment. After footing the bill, with one hand carrying the books and the other holding her hand, Bao Junyan left the place with her. As their backs disappeared from their view, the cashier gathered around with a few other sales assistants to share their infatuations. Oh, God, what a beautiful scene. Right. It was like a scene from a romantic drama. If only I have such a boyfriend. I want one, too. But when did that beautiful girl enter the store? Why didn't I notice her earlier? As customers were few in the evening, the sales staff would have taken note of anyone who walked in. I didn't see her as well. She might have come in when we were all busy at work just now. Outside the entrance, Mu Huan watched the raindrops pelting on the motorcycle that she had parked across the street. Her gaze rested on her machine while feeling the pinch at the same time. She knew her friend would call a taxi to go home later under such a heavy shower. As there were no parking lots for her to park her bike in around this place, this meant that her beloved two-wheels would be left where it was last parked. She wondered if her motorcycle would be damaged after being exposed to a night of rain. What happened? He asked her when he saw her tarrying. Actually, I rode my motorcycle here. It's that machine over there. She pointed a finger at her beloved bike. I'm thinking of bringing it back with me, or it may be damaged under this heavy rain. His eyes followed the direction she was pointing to. As she often needed to travel far, an average motorcycle would not be able to do the trick. Hence, she had gotten herself a bigger model that could run up to more than 100 kilometers per hour. This motorcycle looked so gigantic that the man wondered if it wouldn't be too dangerous for his petite wife to ride in the first place. Well, let it be. You're not allowed to ride this kind of motorcycle in the future. Get the chauffeur to send you to where you want to go next time. Mu Huan. Am I digging my own grave here? No way. I'm not going to let my beloved motorcycle get damaged right under my eyes. Hubby, can you get someone to send this back home, please? This is a good machine, and even if I'm not going to ride it anymore, I can give it away. I would feel the pinch if it were to be damaged under the rain. She tugged at his elbow as she pleaded coyly. Bao Junyan. Hubby, you are my very, very best hubby. Can you do that, please? Pretty please, she said. Bao Junyan. What should he do now when he just could not resist her charm? Give it away after it's sent back home. You can't ride this anymore. Okay, she said while nodding in acquiescence. At the back of his mind, though, he wondered if she would truly stop riding her bike. The more he interacted with his cute little wifey, the more he realized how different she was from his first impression of her. Chapter 46. Don't Poke Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. A strong gust of cold wind blew over and she sneezed. Frowning, he said to her, "Get in the car first." He was worried that she might catch a cold. What about my bike? She was still thinking of her motorcycle. I'll get someone to bring it back. Thank you, hubby. You're the best, she cried out coyly. Bao Junyan. As he was someone who hardly smiled, no one had dared to act coquettish before him. His wife was the first. And, apparently, it felt rather good. At around midnight. The drowsy girl was sleeping when she felt that something was amiss. Barely able to open her eyes, she saw a woman approaching her with a syringe. It startled her so much that her body instinctively retracted further into her quilt, and she cried, "Don't come any closer. I'm going to punch you if you dare to come close." The lady doctor was stunned by her threat. Bao Junyan. His little wifey was usually adorable, but she could be fierce when she was in a semi-conscious state. Previously, she'd threatened to punch others when she was drunk. It was the same threat again this time. Be good, you're running a fever right now and need an injection. He did not expect her to have such a poor constitution. After catching a cold gust outside the bookstore, she developed a high fever and refused to take any oral medication. In the end, he had to get someone to give her an antipyretic injection. You're the one having a fever right now. Stop fooling me. I told all of you to stay away from me. Don't poke me with a needle or I'll turn nasty. Besides hunger, she was most afraid of needles. Very afraid, in fact. Her stepmother was a doctor, and to prevent others from finding out that she was abusing her stepdaughter, she would use the extra fine needles to poke into the girl. These were especially painful, and these acts had cast a dark shadow in her young and impressionable mind back then. Even now that it's been so many years since her granny had taken her away and she was all grown up, her instinctive fear would still surface at the sight of the needles. This was even after she'd made sure she had learned enough self-defense skills to knock down many, eliminating the need to worry about bullies. As a young kid, whenever someone found needle wounds on her, her stepmother would cook up a story that these were marks left by acupuncture that she had performed on the girl because she was sick. Hence, in her drowsy state, she unconsciously assumed that the man was lying when he said that he was giving her treatment because she was running a temperature. He drew closer to her and coaxed, "Stop fooling around and be good." "I'm not good. I won't be obedient. Let me warn you, if anyone dares to poke me right now, I'll fight it out with you." No one ever, was going to drive another needle into her. She was no longer the helpless little girl she was as a kid. Not anymore. Seeing how the fever had rendered his wife irrational and how he could feel the heat emanating from her as he stepped closer, he decided to force the injection on her. He reached out, caught hold of her and wanted to place her on his lap. Although she was out of strength by now, she put up a struggle still. Unfortunately, she was no match against his overpowering muscles, especially when she was down with fever. She already lost out to him on normal days, even more so now when she was unwell. The helplessness and fear she felt transported her back to her younger days when she was being tortured. The buried memories resurfaced and mingled with the reality in her mind. Retreating further into his arms, she cried out in trembling fear, "Don't poke me. Don't poke me. I beg you. Don't poke. Don't poke. I'll be good. I'll learn to be good, really. Don't poke me. Don't." He could not bear to plunge in the needle upon seeing her in such a state of terror. Looking at the doctor, he asked, she should be able to take in her medication now. Can we change this into an oral dose instead? Chapter 47. A dark shadow on her mind. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, it will be slower to take effect if it's taken orally, but we can apply a cold compress to bring down the temperature as well, so it should be fine. The doctor saw the frightened girl and could not bear to give her the injection as well. Dipping his head, he told her, you can avoid the needle, but you have to swallow your medication orally. I'll take it. I'll swallow anything. I'll eat anything. Just don't poke me. Don't poke me. It was as if she had returned to those days when her stepmother had given her rotten food to consume. As the woman often claimed that her stepdaughter fell sick easily, the girl had to act the part. Still, she'd rather taken food that had gone bad than to be poked, even though this meant that she'd really fall sick with a bad tummy. After he fed her the medication, she finally went to sleep. While dozing off, she would still mumble in her dream. Don't poke me. Don't poke. The man watched with furrowed brows. There must be a dark shadow cast over Madame's mind, the lady doctor said. He looked at her intently. She knew this was a signal for her to go on. Even though there are many people out there who are afraid of needles, and some of them would even faint at the sight, their reactions are not as drastic as hers. Moreover, Madame was telling us not to poke her instead of saying that she did not want an injection. His face sank gradually. His wife must have endured great suffering to have such a deep fear of needles. The thought of his lovely and obedient wife having been ruthlessly tortured made his blood boil with the desire for vengeance for a split second. Her fever finally subsided around dawn. As she had her fitful sleep, he left her in the bedroom to go to the study room. This was when Pa Wang received an order to investigate her childhood at the Mu family. The sun was setting when she woke up finally. She looked to be in a daze the moment she opened her eyes, staring dumbly at the surroundings. You've woken up. She turned her head only when she heard a voice speaking to her. The dusk cast a glow on the man's body, shrouding him in a ring of halo that accentuated his surreal beauty. This sight made her sigh in wonderment. I must have been a savior to the galaxy in my past life one. If not, she could not have married him. With him beside her, how was she going to settle for just any man in the future? Would she need to prepare herself to be single and lonely for the rest of her life, then? What do you mean by saving the galaxy? Are you hallucinating? He was ignorant of internet slangs and, thus, of what she meant by her expression. He thought she was still in a feverish stupor to utter nonsense. Why are you so good looking? She reached out to touch his face out of the blue, her eyes looking misty because she was mesmerized. With his white shirt refracting the light from the sun rays, he looked ethereally handsome. Bao Junyan. This was the first time someone held his face and told him he looked good, actually. Hi. She sighed again suddenly. What is it? I'm hungry. Sitting up, she recomposed herself and retracted her hand. Bao Junyan. Isn't her 180-degree change in stance too abrupt and sudden? What time is it now? Has the sun just risen? She asked upon seeing the crimson ball hanging outside the window. But very soon, she realized that this was not what she had reckoned it to be. The sun looks like it's setting. I'm glad to see that the fever has not rendered you dumb. He reached out to ruffle her hair. Mu Huan. Something's wrong. Did I have a fever? Yes, and you were burning close to 40 degrees Celsius. Most adults would hardly catch a high fever, and you caught a chill just because of a cold gust. Your body's constitution is really poor, so you need training. I have engaged a professional trainer and nutritionist. From now on, you'll follow their instructions in your diet and training to improve your health. Chapter 48. What does she do when she feels like crying? You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios. He was a doer and had arranged everything for her while she was sleeping. Mu Huan. Poor constitution. I've never fallen sick since I left the Mu family. And no bugs could catch me during the flu seasons either. Hubby, last night was an accident. My constitution has always been good, and I have not caught a cold for a long time. I don't need a trainer or a nutritionist. She hardly had time for training, and the thought of keeping to a restricted diet was too much to bear. She would eat what she liked whenever she wanted. Be good. He caressed her head and refused to accept her objection. Mu Huan. What do? I feel like crying now. Because of this episode, she was ordered to stay at home to rest. For 2 days, she could not step out of the house, and this got her too anxious for good. Hence, when she found out from the butler that her husband was going for a last-minute business trip and would not be back for the night, she ran back to her room immediately in great anticipation. And while the housekeeper was busy, she took the chance to slip out. At the barbecue store. Haven't I told you not to blow-dry your hair in front of the air.con, her friend told her with a smug look. That shouldn't be the reason. I used to do that and I didn't catch a cold or a fever. Then what happened this time? You were burning close to 40 degrees Celsius, that's enough to fry an egg on your forehead. Her lips gave a slight twitch. Can you stop exaggerating? No matter what, watch out for your health next time. You are getting on in age and are no longer a youngling. Li Meng took a bite off a skewer. Hello, sis, I'm only a freshman in uni. What does she mean by me getting on in age? Oh, yeah. I see you as a married woman and forget that you are actually the same age as me. Just when she was about to punch her buddy, Li Meng gave her a friendly jab in the ribs. Well, were you too intimate with him recently? Was it spending too much time and energy in bed with him at night that led to your low immunity? Mu Huan. This is a possibility. Oh, right. That scumbag has returned the money to Sis Xian, and she has transferred our share over to our accounts. Just in time. I need some money right now. What is it? Are you going to buy a house? The money I have isn't enough to buy a house in the imperial capital. I'm using the money for some other business. She had everything planned out during the 2-day house arrest. What is it for? Half an hour later, at all agency. Wu Xingye, do me a favor. I have a paid assignment for you. She walked right up to the most handsome man in their agency. What kind of assignment? What's the payout? Everyone who worked in this agency needed money in one way or another. The assignment is to go undercover at the Prince Clubhouse, 50,000 yuan payment after completion. She did not want to owe anyone a favor and quoted him a figure close to his market rate. Prince Clubhouse. He found this name familiar before realizing what it was. It's that gigolo club. Yes. Are you asking me to go there as a gigolo and be touched by others? He jumped. You are likely to be considered as an apprentice, and with so much competition at that place, you are unlikely to receive clients just yet. Don't even think about it. I'm not going, I won't accept this assignment, he adamantly refused. Come on, brother Xiaoyi. You look the best in this agency. No one can do this job except you. Brother Xiaoyi. Her cajoling only gave him goosebumps. Mu Huan, stop your nonsense. Chapter 49. Let them fight over for you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios. She was not good at acting coquettish in the first place. Hence, while slamming her fist on the chair next to him, she bellowed, Wu Xingye, if you are not going to take this assignment, I'll hammer you. Every day. The chair broke into two. Wu Xingye. Am I a masochist? Why didn't I agree to it when she asked me nicely at first? I didn't want to be threatened in this way. How many days of going undercover do I need to do? That depends on your ability. If you're able to find out what I'm looking for, you don't even need to stay for a day. Wu Xingye. Those who worked at all agency were capable, to begin with. Including the fact that he did not like the idea of being groped like a gigolo, he was able to get the information she wanted within 3 days. That very night, Mu Huan returned to the Prince Clubhouse and asked for the star of the clubhouse again. The lead host did not expect Mu Huan to appear once more and to specifically ask for him. Well, it looks like you do have your ways. You're being called again just after your last appointment. Furthermore, I heard it's a pretty girl this time. The clubhouse's second in place sneered jealously. He refused to acknowledge his competitor and simply walked out after putting on his clothes. Who do you think you are? Do you think you are a class above us by snubbing us? Don't you forget that you are dirtier than us by having more bookings? The lead host was already at the door when he heard that. Clenching his fists tightly, he finally strode off without a word. After leaving the clubhouse with Mu Huan, the lead host turned to her and said, "Little lass, treasure your life. Don't waste your life away by trying to get the adults' attention just because you are feeling lonely or empty within." He did not like to sell his body, and neither did he want to see a girl destroying her life because of a rebellious moment. "I'm not here to destroy myself. I'm here to make a deal with you," she told him quietly. He was startled to hear that. "Let's change our location, this is not a place for a discussion." She swept her gaze across the surroundings as she spoke. Although he did not think he could make any deal with a girl like her, he obliged and left with her. She brought him to a safe place for a discussion. "Help me by seducing 2 women and making them fight over you. In return, I'll rescue your sister and give you a sum of money for both of you to escape." Her forthrightness shocked the man thoroughly. "What do you mean? I know you are not willingly working for the clubhouse. You came from a decent family and used to be an educator. However, something tragic happened in your family and you owe the boss of this clubhouse a big sum of money. Your younger sister is in his hands right now, that's why you are being forced to do this." Because of his excellent upbringing, he did not have the usual shifty and wanton mannerisms that the rest of the gigolos did. Instead, he emanated a refreshing sense of charm. At that time, when she saw him with his good looks, charisma, and background, an idea formed quickly in her mind. Moreover, as she communicated further with him and realized that he was actually reluctant to be touched by women or to snarl their money, she knew there must be something fishy going on. It was strange for an unwilling man to become the lead host at the club. She wanted to use him, that was why she got Wu Xingye to investigate further. "I don't know what you mean. I'm leaving if you don't want my service." He stood up to leave. "Your sister is really pretty. And I was told that the boss plans to train her to receive men at his male clubhouse even though she's only 14. When she heard this from Wu Xingye, she was disgusted with the boss's intention to use an underage girl. Even if the lead host refused the deal, she would still find a way to rescue that little girl. Of course, she could not let him know that. Chapter 50. Ruin their reputation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, that's not possible. He promised me that he'd take good care of my sister. He'll let her have a normal upbringing and receive a good education. His younger sister was his greatest weakness, thus, when he heard what she said, he could not keep his cool and burst out in great agitation. "Can you believe a bad guy's words?" she asked with a raised brow, and then took out some photos with the image of his sister undergoing escort training. Looking at these photos, he clenched his fists tightly and, after a long while, asked, "Then, what about you? Can I trust your words? What if you can't deliver what you promise and my sister is harmed? What if that happens?" The lead host was worried that Mu Huan had been sent by the boss of the clubhouse to test his loyalty. Hence, He'd feigned ignorance at first. Although he was convinced that she was not sent by him, he was doubtful that she had the ability to save his sister. How about this? I'll save your sister first, and it won't be traced back to you. You can then agree to my proposal after you've ensured your sister's safety. What do you think? She'd thrown the proposition to him with her brow raised. Are you able to do that? He eyed her, looking dubious. No matter how he looked at her, she only appeared as a mere 18. Or 19-year-old girl to him. Even if she was capable enough to find out all these secrets about him and had even taken all these pictures, she would not be able to face off against that formidable boss. The boss of this clubhouse is very influential. Even those with some power could not touch him, let alone you, a little girl. The lead host was well aware that his sister would not be safe in the boss's hands. Thus, from his initial reluctance, he had become proactive to get to know the rich ladies, hoping to find a way to save his sister through them. But he failed every time. His sister was punished by the boss each time he failed. Hence, he dared not try anymore. I know he's powerful, so do you think I would make this deal with you if I didn't have the assurance to save her? I would have been too worried about my life to do this. How do you plan to save my sister from him? You don't have to know what I'm gonna do. All you need to do is to decide if you agree to my terms, she told him indifferently. He was still undecided as he looked at her when, right at this moment, he received a call from a colleague in the clubhouse who was on good terms with him. He answered the call first while trying to decide what to do next. Bro, the boss lied to me. I was fooled by him. He did not get medical care for my mother. She died a while ago and no one turned up at the morgue for her. I just found out that she has been there for more than 6 months. I only found out now. His colleague on the other end of the line was sobbing hysterically. His hand that was carrying the phone was trembling. After putting down the phone, he paused for a long time before lifting his eyes to look at her. Who do you want me to seduce? He decided to give it a shot, but he needed to have a trump card, too. She knew he had to have some form of assurance. Without saying anything more, she passed the photos of Bai Shuexian and Mu Kursen to him. I want you to seduce this mother-daughter pair. Mother-daughter pair. That's right, the mother and the daughter. You want me to ruin their reputation. He was smart enough to deduce her intention. That's correct. She wanted Bai Shuexian to go to hell. Whoever dared to touch her granny would be ruthlessly destroyed. He stored away the photos and asked, aren't you worried that I might look for these 2 ladies with the photos you've given me? This mature woman looks rich and influential. She may have a higher chance of rescuing my sister than you do. Will you do that? She raised a brow. No. However, if my sister falls into any danger because of you, I'll drag you down to suffer as well, he told her viciously. All right.